Sent from Disneyland, history in our hand. So much to say about yesterday and the decades we have spanned. Postcards from the park, this journey will embark. See what has changed and what remains on Sent from Disneyland. Sent from Disneyland.
Welcome to the Sent from Disneyland podcast.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
If it's your first time joining us, welcome. On this podcast, we'll take a journey into the past and explore Disneyland, Disneyland history, and more, with mementos, snapshots, souvenirs, and postcards sent from Disneyland, from 1955 to the present. Let's start by thanking my patrons from Patreon.com. You can join in at any level to support the show and receive snail mail from my trips to Disneyland and from my desk, plus some sneak peeks and bonus content. Special thanks to Random Olive, the first patron to this podcast, and to the rest of the e-ticket patrons, Tania, Eric Daniels, Monica Seitz Vega, Scott Cagle, Russ Romano, Michael and Christina Cross, and Sheila Harry. C-ticket patrons Serious Inquiries Only, Debbie Weinstein, Jennifer Schneep, Angela Reynolds, Grace Coate, Patty Wolin, and Ben and Noel Bruning. B-ticket patron Joshua Bell, and to the A-ticket patrons Elise Sharp, Zealot Infinity, Alexis Robles, Angel DeBlock, and the Beyond the Railroad podcast. I am your host, your post-host Clocky, and today we have 2 postcards sent from Disneyland. The front of our first postcard has Sleeping Beauty Castle. You can see guests walking through the archway, and on the right you can see 2 of the 7 dwarfs, as well as 2 horses pulling either the fire wagon or the old carriage. On the back it reads, Sleeping Beauty Castle, Disneyland. Sleeping Beauty Castle welcomes guests to the wonderful land of fantasy and imagination, a land where dreams can actually come true for the young in heart. It's postmarked July 18, 1966, with a Glendale cancel and a 4-cent Lincoln postage stamp, Scott number 1036. I assume they visit the park on Monday, July 18, 1966, when park hours were from 9 a.m. to midnight. The weather was a high of 84 and a low of 60. Park attendance that day was 35,522. Is addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Noel Frame of Lore City, Ohio. It reads, Monday. Dear neighbors, we are having a wonderful time. We talked to both Howard and Ruth. They are fine. We'll probably see Howard tonight. As ever, Bessie and John. I chose 2 postcards from 1966 because that's when Tony Baxter was working at Disneyland. Last weekend, I was fortunate enough to attend an event at Stage 9, downstairs in their underground vault. The event was a special evening with Tony Baxter. I purchased the ticket back in September, not knowing exactly what Tony Baxter was going to be presenting or talking about. Days leading up to the event, Stage 9 announced that he would be presenting 2 art pieces that he had made throughout his career, both while studying and at Imagineering. I arrived at Stage 9 around 6 o'clock and toured the area before running into Scott, Rebecca, and Delaney, aka Disneyland nurse, R. McNellis, and the Caring Kitchen respectively. We waited outside in Old Sacramento before being led into the vault area of Stage 9, where we received our credentials and the $75 gift certificate. In the vault area, there was also an Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Forbidden Eye Jeep front. The initial ticket was $100, and that included the gift certificate as well as food and drink during the event. We went downstairs to the underground where the presentation would be held. Down there were various artifacts from Tony Baxter's career, including a piece of the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad engine, a seat from Splash Mountain, and other random Disney props from rides that Tony Baxter had worked on. After setting down our stuff in the front row, we wandered around the underground, looking at the different options we could purchase for Tony Baxter to sign at the end of the presentation. After seeing the 2 art pieces, as well as the Disneyland attraction posters and art prints, we went to the back, where the 3 drink options were available at the Kungaloosh Bar. The 3 themed drinks were called Dreamfinder, based on the Journey Through Imagination attraction at Epcot, the Wildest Drink in the Wilderness, based on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and the Eye of Mara, based on the Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Forbidden Eye attraction. There are also various cookies, sliders, and other hors d'oeuvres to enjoy prior to the presentation. Add some flair to your mail by checking out stamps at Enfield Post. You can explore different stamp options on our Etsy site, grab some great deals by following the EP Sunday Sales on Instagram, or create something special and have her design a stamp array for your invitation or celebration. You can head over to EnfieldPost.com and explore all the different vintage postage stamps you can use on your next card or letter. That's ENFIELDPOST. on Instagram, and EnfieldPost.com for your wedding and vintage postage needs. Enfield Post is the official postage stamp sponsor of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. The front of our next postcard has Sleeping Beauty Castle at night. You can see one guest looking at the castle, and if you look closely, just under the main archway, you can see the entrance to the castle candy shop. On the back it reads, Sleeping Beauty's Castle. Sleeping Beauty's enchanted castle stands guard over the entrance to Fantasyland, where guests cross a real drawbridge to enter the land of storybook and fantasy. It's postmarked August 16, 1966, with a South Laguna cancel and a 4-cent Lincoln postage stamp, Scott number 1036. I assume they visit the park on Monday, August 15, 1966, when park hours were from 9 a.m. to midnight. The weather was a high of 89 and a low of 66. Park attendance that day was 42,271. It's addressed to the McKay, Wadsworth, and Burns family of Syracuse, New York. It reads, 8/16/66. How about that? We are having a wonderful time and seeing lots of beautiful things. We are on our way to Mexico today. See you, Raj and Sandra. The other special guest at the event was Disney historian Tim O'Day, who served as an interviewer for the event. This made it more of a conversation between Tony and him than an hour-long lecture. Tim took us on a journey through some of the highlights of Tony's career, starting with scooping ice cream at the Carnation Ice Cream Parlor on Main Street, through working on Disneyland Paris and the Indiana Jones attraction. The 2 art pieces that were available from Disney Fine Art were also available earlier this year at D23, the Ultimate Fan Expo. One image was titled Steps of St. Paul and was a watercolor that Tony Baxter had made while in college. It depicts the bird seller scene from the movie Mary Poppins. Tony spoke at length about his relationship with the movie, including watching it for the first time in theaters with his mother, and then going to the drive-in and recording the audio of the movie so he could listen to it again and again. The second piece of artwork is called Tyrolean Fantasy. I purchased this piece on canvas and was able to get Tony Baxter's autograph on the bottom. The image is essentially a concept art for New Fantasyland and the Fantasyland at Disneyland Paris. It was painted in the style of Claude Coates and some of the other early Imagineers. There are some fun nods to Disney movies and the parks included in the artwork. The front of the original Sleeping Beauty Castle, Snow White's Wishing Well, the Seven Dwarfs Cottage, and Tony's concept for Disneyland Paris's version of Sleeping Beauty Castle are all included. The event lasted around 3 hours, and at the end, you were able to go through the shop and purchase anything else you may need from Stage 9 after the shop had already closed to normal visitors. Overall, I always have a great time at Stage 9, and I'm looking forward to future events they're having next year. My incoming postcard is sponsored by the Art Throwdown. Art Throwdown, or ATD, is a craft hour on Instagram, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern or 6 Pacific. Art Throwdown is a wonderful community of artists who love to share their craft, from creating sticker postcards and coloring techniques to intricate paper cutting and unique crafting. It's always a treat to watch a show and occasionally get some one-of-a-kind postcards from the group. Each host brings something a little different to each show. I'll list some of the regular hosts, or you can follow Russ Romano 2021 on Instagram. The front of my incoming postcard is purple, with a hand-drawn image of Cricky from Mulan. On the left and bottom part of the card is sparkly purple washi tape. It's postmarked October 4th, 2024, with a Germany cancel and a €95 post-crossing postage stamp. It reads, Dear Clocky, I hope you have a great day. I had no Disney postcard, so I improvised. I'm sorry that the cricket I drew looks so bad. Anyway, I hope it brings you just as much luck as it brought Mulan. That's my favorite Disney movie. What's yours? Best wishes, Louis. Thank you so much for the postcard, Louis. I love getting hand-drawn or handmade art postcards from Postcrossing. I have a few of them in my collection that I've got through Postcrossing over the last 3 years I've done it. My favorite movie is Sleeping Beauty. At the Tony Baxter event, he had mentioned that Sleeping Beauty was his favorite movie as well. I feel like it's the pinnacle of the Disney movies made while Walt was alive. The artwork and the style are incredible, as well as the rest of the movie, music, storyline, and characters. I like a lot of other Disney animated features, but Sleeping Beauty always makes it to the top of my list. Thanks for listening to Sent from Disneyland. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. It would also help to leave a 5-star rating and comment on whatever podcast platform you use. If you'd like to support the show financially, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/sentfromdisneyland. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Sent from Disneyland, or my website, sentfromdisneyland.com. For questions and comments, send me a postcard addressed to Sent from Disneyland, P.O. Box 44, Hood, California, 95639. This podcast is not affiliated with Disney, the United States Postal Service, or any post office or Disney-related properties. Opinions expressed on this podcast belong to the host and guests of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. This podcast is produced and edited by Clocky McDowell, website designed by Misty McDowell, theme song was written and performed by Noah Sunday Lefkowitz. Take it away, Noah.